An NHL Insider has dropped a massive Leafs free agency update. It's following what has been a wild offseason to date of transactions and moves. There is one domino that's left to fall, and a new update has revealed some very big new details we're going to break down, as well as a few other interesting updates on this episode. You're going to want to stay tuned to the end, but before you get into it, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. If you're a part of that percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. If you want to help us support and continue helping us support our journey to 25,000 subscribers, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Darius, this is a familiar player we're going to be talking about today, and his domino is going to fall, and it's going to fall very, very soon. We're inching closer and closer to the start of everything ramping up, and that player is, of course, Jack Roslovic. Now, we have a bunch of new updates to go over today, but in case you missed it from a couple days ago, Frank Saravalli came out and said that the Leafs are very much in contention to get Jack Roslovic. Now, since then, there's been some new updates, new reports, and things like that. And let's just dive right into it. We have some pretty big quotes here. So let's start with the full quote, new quote from Frank Saravalli. He said, "It's interesting that you said the Leafs are Jack Roslovic. I was wondering if you mean the Leafs and Roslovic because I think Toronto Maple Leafs are still very much in contention. The Toronto Maple Leafs were one of the teams that were engaged in conversation with Jack Roslovic," he said. And some people have suggested, hey, this is a done deal with Roslovic, and they're going to announce it at some point in the future. But every side that's connected to Jack Roslovic and the Leafs has said, no, the deal is not done yet. It's something to keep an eye out on. So we knew that, we covered it. The report from Frank Saravalli saying they're in contention, but now we're hearing that some people are believing that a deal is actually done. So that's a little bit wild, Darius. What are your thoughts on this? We also have one from Elliot Freeman we'll dive into in a minute, but keeps getting more and more intriguing with each passing day. And I think with each day that he doesn't sign with another team, the Leafs become more and more likely to acquire him.
Yes, we also heard other reports that, there's a handful of teams that are involved with Jack Roslovic and that they would like his services. And one of them is the Vancouver Canucks, who want him to play second line center, but it sounds like talks there have cooled off and probably won't happen. So that takes another team out of the running. The Maple Leafs are still rumored or reported, whatever you want to say, from some of these insiders that, they're floating it out there that the Leafs are still kind of talking to Roslovic. I think it's incredibly weird that Roslovic has not signed yet. There's a couple other players, but I can see some of those other players that are still on the market signing PTOs. Roslovic does not, scream PTO to me. I feel like that's a player who would sign like a 3 year or a 3x3 or something like that, like not a PTO player. So I think that's an interesting one. For the Toronto Maple Leafs too, how do they make that salary cap work? You have to make a move before then. And what's going to happen with Max Pacioretty as well? Like, is he coming back to the Leafs? We heard some rumblings about that earlier in the offseason. If that's to happen, you got to free up even more cap space. And where does Roslovic even fit into this lineup? We'll get into that in a bit as well. But I think it's a very interesting one that some people are suggesting it's a done deal. They're keeping it hush hush, and they're going to announce it at some point. I would imagine it has something to do with having to move salary cap space out, obviously with Calle Jarnkrok, David Kampf, who I don't believe have spots on this team anymore. But it's an interesting one. Again, we've heard other reports from Friedman, we'll get into a second, that, open this up even more. So I just think it's very interesting that he hasn't signed yet. I mean, we are headed into September at this point. Training camps are opening. This guy does not have a contract, and he's been rumored to go to the Leafs, who need to free up cap space to sign him for a while now at this point.
Yeah, very surprising. You can see this here at the Leafs training camp around the corner. Toronto remains in the hunt for Jack Roslovic, and people are starting to say, and ultimately it's true here, the last domino to fall is Jack Roslovic before the trade floodgates open, which, I mean, we heard multiple reports saying that, this offseason was going to be wild and that, all the things were going to open up. They've yet to really open up at all. You can see here a couple of key players, including Roslovic, have yet to sign contract. One of them might be a PTO. Roslovic, you mentioned it yourself. There's no world he's going to accept a PTO. And if he does, then it'll be the biggest finesse. Because as much as, a lot of Leafs fans, and myself included to a degree, like, I don't think he's the answer necessarily. He's a good hockey player, and he's coming off of a solid year. Now, let's dive into a couple of other things here surrounding him. So in case you're unfamiliar, let's just dive quickly into his stats. 39 points in 81 games, only 28 years old. And something to note, he's only been playing 13 or so, 14 minutes per game. So if you pair him, if they want to pair him in the top six, could open up a very interesting scenario. But this is a report from Elliot Freeman as well. I've heard there's still a few teams looking at him. He's the best available player remaining, and obviously he hasn't found anything he 100% likes, but there's definitely a few teams poking around there. I've heard 5 or 6, so he has to get something, or has to get something he's comfortable with, and we know with Toronto, they're trying to move money around, and I think ultimately this stems from the Leafs need to move David Kampf for Calle Jarnkrok, open up both, a spot on the roster and in the top 6 or even bottom 6 for him, and open up that salary. And he's a very solid player, some really solid advanced analytics. And at this point, with the way that everything has went, if you can't get anyone else, clearly the trade floodgates haven't opened. Don't know if they are going to open. Go ahead and if they get Jack Roslovic, it makes your team better no matter what way you slice it.
Yeah, he's pretty good offensively, like really, really good advanced analytics offensively for the minutes that he's playing. Keep that in mind as well. If you give him more minutes, does he put up more points, or is he the type that, is doing a whole lot of nothing with those extra minutes, right? You have to consider those things. Obviously, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think it's an interesting option because it's cheaper than going out and spending assets on a player who can play in your top six. Roslovic, I would imagine if you're bringing him in, you're not going to have any space to go out and get a top six guy that we've been talking about via trade all summer. So, he would probably slot in there. He's played with Austin Matthews before. I wonder if he wants to play with Austin Matthews again. I feel like most players would want to do that. I think he would put up more points playing with Austin Matthews just by default, playing higher up in a lineup, more minutes, all of those things. He could fit in on the right wing there. So there's some familiarity there, right? So I wonder if he's considering that or maybe a bigger role with a different team. I'm not exactly sure because I don't think he would play on the power play with the Leafs. So that's going to be interesting to monitor, but where does he even fit into the lineup? I just feel like there's a bit of a logjam at this point. Obviously, not even including David Camp and Calle Jarnkrok, who I'm just assuming are going to be traded at some point here before the preseason starts. So obviously, the Leafs need to free up salary cap space to make this work. We know that Roslovic wants around 3 million, if not just over 3 million. The Leafs clearly do not have the cap space to make that work, so they would have to free up a little bit more, which they would with David Camp, Calle Jarnkrok going out, or even just one of them could work, obviously. But with the lineup, I don't know where he fits. In theory, he's a third line player. He has been, a second line player in the past. He can put up those minutes. He's been, last season on average putting up around 13 minutes. So that's an interesting one. Does he play in your top six? Is that the answer for your top six? I don't think you have room in your bottom six for him. Does he even make sense on the third line? He doesn't make sense on the fourth line, right? So a lot of options there. I think Nylander is your second line right wing. That is for sure at this point, just because of the way the lines kind of shape up. But I think it's going to get very interesting as we head towards training camp because there's a lot of trades that I feel like still need to happen, not with just the Leafs, but around the league that have not happened. And there's a lot of guys that remain unsigned that I think some of them, again, will probably sign PTOs, but there's a couple that do not scream PTO candidate to me, and they don't have contracts yet.
Yeah, let us know where you think he would fit in specifically on this. Again, these lines, we had a video a few days ago with our lines, but feel free to check that one out there. And if you think he would fit quickly before we wrap up as well, for those curious, looking at the NHL 26 ratings, let us know down below. Just really quick, scan through them, what you agree with, what you don't agree with. A lot of 85 plus overalls. I mean, they're showing Joseph Wallson love at 85. They're throwing obviously Matthews at 94. Even Brandon Carlo getting an 86. And they put Stolarz and Wall at the same overall, which I'm a little bit surprised about that coming off of Stolarz season. But let us know the most surprising, your favorite one. Let us know down below what your thoughts are on Jack Roslovic. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.